Being sick with an incurable disease, you chose to be frozen until a cure could be found. Waking from your long sleep, you were hoping for good news only to find yourself standing in the middle of a ruin in front of a team of archaeologists. Rise number 06, Frozen Man. Darkness. Silence. A dreamless void stretched endlessly. He had no memory of how long he had floated there, no awareness of the world outside. The last thing he remembered was the cold bite of the cryochamber sealing shut and the whispers of hope that a cure might one day exist for the disease slowly consuming his body. When the stasis chamber finally began to thaw, he opened his eyes to chaos. The sterile white walls he expected were gone. In their place were crumbled stones and faintly glowing carvings. The soft murmur of voices reached him, foreign yet strangely familiar, as if the language had evolved but still carried echoes of his time. The lid of the cryochamber slid open, and his lungs burned as he took his first breath in centuries. The air was thick with dust and mana, a strange energy that tickled his senses in ways he couldn't comprehend. He's awake. The voice came from a young man dressed in tattered robes, his face alight with both awe and fear. Around him stood others, their tools scattered on the ground, their expressions frozen in disbelief. "Where am I?" he rasped, his voice weak, his throat dry as a desert. One of the archaeologists, a woman with silver streaks in her dark hair, stepped forward cautiously. "You're in the ruins of Avalon's last bastion," she said, her words heavy with reverence. "You are a relic of the old world." Days passed, and he learned the truth about the world he had awakened to. The apocalypse had come and gone, leaving behind a shattered civilization struggling to rebuild. Mana had become the lifeblood of the new world, a force as dangerous as it was miraculous. The disease that had once ravaged his body was gone, burned away by the residual mana that now coursed through his veins. But the cure had come at a cost. "You've changed," the silver-haired woman said one evening as they sat by the campfire. "Your body. It's not entirely human anymore. The mana has altered you." He flexed his fingers, watching the faint glow beneath his skin. He could feel the power humming within him, a constant reminder that he was no longer the man he used to be. "Am I a monster?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head. "You're a survivor. That's what matters." The archaeological team eventually left the ruins, but he stayed behind, drawn to the ancient carvings that seemed to call to him. He spent weeks exploring the labyrinthine passages, uncovering fragments of a story that felt strangely familiar. One day, as he traced the lines of a mural depicting two dragons locked in battle, he heard footsteps echoing through the chamber. He turned, his senses alert, and saw a man and a woman stepping into the light. The man was tall and lean, his sharp eyes scanning the room with practiced precision. The woman beside him was striking, her crimson scales glinting in the dim light, her presence exuding both power and grace. "You're not supposed to be here," the man said, his tone more curious than accusatory. "I could say the same about you," he replied, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The woman stepped forward, her fiery eyes locking onto his. "You don't belong to this time, do you?" He hesitated, then nodded. "I was frozen centuries ago, before the world fell apart. Now I'm just trying to understand what happened." The man exchanged a glance with the woman, who smiled faintly. "You're not the only one searching for answers," she said.